Former U.S. Ambassador to Pakistan, Cameron Munter, joins us now. He currently serves as the CEO and president of the East-West Institute. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
I want to ask you about the escalation between India and Pakistan. Where do you see this headed?
Well, I mean, this is a long time coming. This is it's been tense for a while. There was an Indian attack in Pakistan last night. No one was killed. And what people are thinking now is that perhaps we may end up with a response from Pakistan.
Do you believe that's happening, that's going to come?
Well, the Prime Minister, Imran Khan, has said that he would respond. What we can hope is that it would respond in such a way that it didn't lead to greater tensions. But there's a deeper problem here. The issue is that in Kashmir, as many Pakistanis will say, there is an Indian army and a largely Muslim population where there's been tension for a very long time. In Pakistan, there is a problem of jihadis who have not been cleaned out by the Pakistani government, and their claims to do so are not credible around the world. Both countries have problems they have to face, and this latest tension doesn't help any.
How real of a threat is nuclear war? Is this just hype, or do you think this is a real possibility?
I would say that because of the way that the attack seems to have happened overnight, that the sense that we're close to war is less, because no one was killed in the attack. It seems that it was done in such a way to show Indian resolve without escalating, and I hope that if there is a response from the Pakistanis, they can also do something that doesn't escalate this problem.
Because they chose to strike a forest instead of a populated area.
So it seems.
Yeah. I want to ask you also, we know there's a new Prime Minister in Pakistan, Prime Minister Imran Khan. Do you get the sense that he'll have to feel the sense to retire? You know, he said he's going to. What are the pressures he faces? And also, India faces elections in May. How does that factor into this?
Domestic concerns are very strong on both sides. I had the chance to meet with Imran Khan when I was recently in Pakistan, and he made it clear he is expected to show resolve. His first move with the Indians was to try to put out a hand, what he considered a hand of friendship. But there's not a lot of dialogue going on between the two countries. Domestically in India, there's the elections coming up in April where Modi and his coalition are looking for the nationalist vote. So there's tension on both sides, pressure on both leaders to show resolve.
Speaking of pressures on both leaders, I want to switch and talk about the summit in Vietnam. Sure. What are your expectations at this point? Do you see something substantive coming out of this?
Well, it seems clear that the president wants a win. The problem that people see is, what does a win entail? It's pretty easy to get a win if, as many people are afraid, you give away a lot. Can you give away on the question of whether you can tolerate a nuclear North Korea? Can you give away on the idea of whether you can sign a peace treaty? Can you give away on the notion that you maybe would have fewer exercises with the South Korean army? So the problem is, the president wants to make a deal. He may have a partner with whom he can make a deal. Will the deal be something that actually is seen by the American public as representing their interests?
Do you have a sense of what a deal might look like that the president could claim victory?
Well, yeah. I mean, the president could easily claim victory to say, I have done something that no one else has done before. I've sat down with this leader. I've made peace with, I've brought to an end the war from 1953, the ceasefire. The difficulty is, anyone could have done this, but previous presidents chose not to. And so, is he going to make a deal at the expense of somewhere else? Is he going to make a deal at the expense of key American interests? That's the problem.
When you talk about using sanctions as a diplomatic tool, is it effective? Do you see that happening?
Well, I think sanctions have relaxed already. There's evidence that in the run-up to this, as the president has talked about his great relations, he has undercut, I'm afraid, the maximum pressure approach that he had before. So that I think sanctions are already beginning to ease, and if he eases them further, that is, I think, a win for Kim Jong-un. So the question is, what can he come away with? Can he come away with peace in our time? You know, or is this a domestic president for whom foreign policy is simply going to be collateral damage?
Interesting. Do you believe that sanctions work? We know they've eased off of them at this point, but do they work?
Historically, sanctions have been a blunt instrument. You can look back at the history of sanctions, say with South Africa, saying they made a big difference in the end of the apartheid regime. But in general, sanctions are usually used very broadly when the political goal is to be very focused. So generally, they're a tough weapon that isn't always effective unless you're very careful.
You spoke a little bit about an armistice. Do you see some sort of declaration formally ending the Korean War, something happening on that front?
Well, it's very tempting, I think, to both sides, because it would show that the relationship between the two leaders is a warm one and a trusting one. And so this would be, in any kind of negotiations, a bargaining chip, something that Kim wants very badly, something that Trump could use to show that he has a special relationship. The question is whether he gives it and what he gets for it.
Ambassador Cameron Munter, thank you very much for joining us.
Really a pleasure. Thank you.